On her 16th birthday, my grandma was betrothed by her father to Shan Bianlang, the son of Shang Tingxiu, one of northeast Gaomi Township's richest men. As distillery owners, the Shans used cheap sorghum to produce a strong, high-quality white wine that was famous throughout the area. Northeast Gaomi Township is largely swampy land that is flooded by autumn rains. But since the tall sorghum stalks resisted waterlogging, it was planted everywhere and invariably produced a bumper crop. By using cheap grain to make wine, the Shan family made a very good living. And marrying my grandma off to them was a real feather in great-granddad's cap. Many local families had dreamed of marrying into the Shan family, despite rumors that Shan Bianlang had leprosy. His father was a wizened little man who sported a scrawny queue on the back of his head. And even though his cupboards overflowed with gold and silver, he wore tattered, dirty clothes, often using a length of rope as a belt. Grandma's marriage into the Shan family was the will of heaven, implemented on a day when she and some of her playmates, with their tiny bound feet and long pigtails, were playing beside a set of swings. It was Qingming, the day set aside to attend ancestral graves. Peach trees were in full red bloom. Willows were green. A fine rain was falling, and the girls' faces looked like peach blossoms. It was a day of freedom for them. That year, Grandma was 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed about 130 pounds. She was wearing a cotton print jacket over green satin trousers, with scarlet bands of silk tied around her ankles. Since it was drizzling, she had put on a pair of embroidered slippers soaked in a dozen times in tongue oil, which made a squishing sound when she walked. Her long shiny braids shone, and a heavy silver necklace hung around her neck. Great-granddad was a silversmith. Great-grandma, the daughter of a landlord who had fallen on hard times, knew the importance of bound feet to a girl, and had begun binding her daughter's feet when she was 6 years old, tightening the bindings every day. A yard in length, the cloth bindings were wound around all but the big toes until the bones cracked and the toes turned under. The pain was excruciating. My mother also had bound feet, and just seeing them saddened me so much that I felt compelled to shout, "Down with feudalism! Long live liberated feet!" The results of Grandma's suffering were 2 3-inch golden lotuses, and by the age of 16, she had grown into a well-developed beauty. When she walked, swinging her arms freely, her body swayed like a willow in the wind. Shan Tingxiu, the groom's father, was walking around great-granddad's village, dung basket in hand, when he spotted Grandma among the other local flowers. 3 months later, a bridal sedan chair would come to carry her away. After Shang Tingxiu had spotted Grandma, a stream of people came to congratulate great-granddad and great-grandma. Grandma pondered what it would be like to mount to the jingle of gold and dismount to the tinkle of silver. But what she truly longed for was a good husband, handsome and well-educated, a man who would treat her gently. As a young maiden, she had embroidered a wedding trousseau and several exquisite pictures for the man who would someday become my granddad. Eager to marry, she heard innuendos from her girlfriends that the Shan boy was afflicted with leprosy, and her dreams began to evaporate. Yet, when she began to share her anxieties with her parents, great-granddad hemmed and hawed, while great-grandma scolded the girlfriends, accusing them of sour grapes. Later on, great-granddad told her that the well-educated Shan boy had the fair complexion of a young scholar from staying home all the time. Grandma was confused, not knowing if this was true or not. After all, she thought, her own parents wouldn't lie to her. Maybe her girlfriends had made it all up. Once again, she looked forward to her wedding day. Grandma longed to lose her anxieties and loneliness in the arms of a strong and noble young man. Finally, to her relief, her wedding day arrived, and as she was placed inside the sedan chair, carried by 4 bearers, the horns and woodwinds fore and aft struck up a melancholy tune that brought tears to her eyes. Off they went, floating along as though riding the clouds or sailing through a mist. Grandma was lightheaded and dizzy inside the stuffy sedan chair, her view blocked by a red curtain that gave off a pungent, mildewy odor. She reached out to lift it a crack. Great-granddad had told her not to remove her red veil. A heavy bracelet of twisted silver slid down to her wrist, and as she looked at the coiled snake design, her thoughts grew chaotic and disoriented. A warm wind rustled the emerald green stalks of sorghum, lining the narrow dirt path. Doves cooed in the fields. The delicate powder of petals floated above silvery new ears of waving sorghum. The curtain, embroidered on the inside with a dragon and a phoenix, had faded over years of use, and there was a large stain in the middle. Summer was giving way to autumn, and the sunlight outside the sedan chair was brilliant. The bouncing movements of the bearers rocked the chair slowly from side to side. The leather lining of their poles groaned and creaked. The curtain fluttered gently, letting in an occasional ray of sunlight and from time to time a whisper of cool air. Grandma was sweating profusely, and her heart was racing as she listened to the rhythmic footsteps and heavy breathing of the bearers. The inside of her skull felt cold one minute, as though filled with shiny pebbles, and hot the next, as though filled with coarse peppers. Shortly after leaving the village, the lazy musicians stopped playing, while the bearers quickened their pace. The aroma of sorghum burrowed into her heart. Full-voiced strange and rare birds sang to her from the fields. A picture of what she imagined to be a bridegroom slowly took shape from the threads of sunlight filtering into the darkness of the sedan chair. Painful needle pricks jabbed her heart. "Old man in heaven, protect me!" Her silent prayer made her delicate lips tremble. A light down adorned her upper lip, and her fair skin was damp. Every soft word she uttered was swallowed up by the rough walls of the carriage and the heavy curtain before her. She ripped the tart-smelling veil away from her face and laid it on her knees. She was following local wedding customs, which dictated that a bride wear 3 layers of new clothes, top and bottom, no matter how hot the day. The inside of the sedan chair was badly worn and terribly dirty, like a coffin. It had already embraced countless other brides, now long dead. The walls were festooned with yellow silk so filthy it oozed grease, and of the 5 flies caught inside, 3 buzzed above her head, while the other 2 rested on the curtain before her, rubbing their bright eyes with black stick-like legs. Succumbing to the oppressiveness in the carriage, Grandma eased one of her bamboo shoot toes under the curtain and lifted a crack to sneak a look outside. She could make out the shapes of the bearers, statuesque legs poking out from under loose black satin trousers, and their big fleshy feet encased in straw sandals. They raised clouds of dust as they trampled along, impatiently trying to conjure up an image of their firm, muscular chests. Grandma raised the toe of her shoe and leaned forward. She could see the polished, purple scholar tree poles and the bearers' broad shoulders beneath them. Barriers of sorghum stalks lining the path stood erect and solid in unbroken rows, tightly packed together, sizing one another up with the yet unopened clay-green eyes of graying ears, one indistinguishable from the next, as far as she could see, like a vast river. The path was so narrow in places it was barely passable, causing the warmy, sappy leaves to brush noisily against the sedan chair. The men's bodies emitted the sour smell of sweat. Infatuated by the masculine odor, Grandma breathed in deeply. This ancestor of mine must have been nearly bursting with passion. As the bearers carried their load down the path, their feet left a series of V imprints known as tramples in the dirt, for which satisfied clients usually rewarded them, and which fortified the bearer's pride of profession. It was unseemly to trample with an uneven canvas or to grip the poles, and the best bearers kept their hands on their hips the whole time, rocking the sedan chair in perfect rhythm with the musicians' haunting tunes, which reminded everyone within earshot of the hidden suffering in whatever pleasures lay ahead. When the sedan chair reached the plains, the bearer began to get a little sloppy, both to make up time and to torment their passenger. Some brides were bounced around so violently they vomited from motion sickness, soiling their clothes and slippers. The reaching sounds from inside the carriage pleased the bearers as though they were giving vent to their own miseries. The sacrifices these strong young men made to carry their cargo into bridal chambers must have embittered them, which was why it seemed so natural to torment the brides. One of the 4 men bearing Grandma's sedan chair that day would eventually become my granddad. It was Commander Yujan Ao. At the time, he was a beefy 20-year-old, a pallbearer and a sedan bearer at the peak of his trade. The young men of the generation were as sturdy as northeast Gaomi sorghum, which is more than can be said about us weaklings who succeeded them. It was a custom back then for sedan bearers to tease the bride while trundling her along, like distillery workers who drink the wine they make. Since it is their due, these men torment all who ride in their sedan chairs, even the wife of the Lord of Heaven, if she should be a passenger. Sorghum leaves scraped the sedan chair mercilessly, when all of a sudden the dreading monotony of the trip was broken by the plaintive sounds of weeping, remarkably like the musicians' tunes coming from deep in the fields. As Grandma listened to the music, trying to picture the instruments in the musicians' hands, she raised the curtain with her foot until she could see the sweat-soaked waist of one of the bearers. Her gaze was caught by her own red-embroidered slippers, with their tapered slimness and cheerless beauty, ringed by halos of incoming light until they looked like lotus blossoms, or, even more, like tiny goldfish that had settled to the bottom of a bowl. 2 teardrops, as transparently pink as immature grains of sorghum, wetted Grandma's eyelashes and slipped down her cheeks to the corners of her mouth. As she was gripped by sadness, the image of a learned and refined husband, handsome in his high-topped hat and wide sash, like a player on the stage, blurred and finally vanished, replaced by the horrifying picture of Shan Bianlang's face, his leprous mouth covered with rotting tumors. Her heart turned to ice. Were these tapered golden lotuses, a face as fresh as peaches and apricots, gentility of 1,000 kinds, and 10,000 varieties of elegance, all reserved for the pleasure of a leper? Better to die and be done with it. The disconsolate weeping in the sorghum field was dotted with words, like knots in a piece of wood. A blue sky, yo. A sapphire sky, yo. A painted sky, yo. A mighty cudgel, yo. Dear elder brother, yo. Death has claimed you. You have brought down little sister Yo. I must tell you that the weeping of women from northeast Gaomi Township makes beautiful music. During 1912, the first year of the Republic, professional mourners known as wailers came from Chufu, the home of Confucius, to study local weeping techniques. Meeting up with a woman lamenting the death of her husband seemed to Grandma to be a stroke of bad luck on her wedding day, and she grew even more dejected. Just then, one of the bears spoke up. "You there, little bride in the chair, say something. The long journey has bored us to tears." Grandma quickly snatched up her red veil and covered her face, gently drawing her foot back from beneath the curtain and returning the carriage to darkness. "Sing us a song while we bear you along." The musicians, as though snapping out of a trance, struck up their instruments. A trumpet blared from behind the chair. "Toota, toota, poo-pa, poo-pa." One of the bearers up front imitated the trumpet sound, evoking coarse, raucous laughter all around. Grandma was drenched with sweat. Back home, as she was being lifted into the sedan chair, Great-Grandma had exhorted her not to get drawn into any banter with the bearers. Sedan bearers and musicians are low-class roadies, capable of anything, no matter how depraved. They began rocking the chair so violently that poor Grandma couldn't keep her seat without holding on tight. "No answer? Okay, rock! If we can't shake any words loose, we can at least shake the piss out of her." The sedan chair was like a dinghy tossed about by the waves, and Grandma held on to the wooden seat for dear life. The 2 eggs she'd eaten for breakfast churned in her stomach. The flies buzzed around her ears. Her throat tightened as the taste of eggs surged up into her mouth. She bit her lip. "Don't throw up. Don't let yourself throw up," she commanded herself. "You mustn't let yourself throw up, Feng Lian. They say throwing up in the bridal chair means a lifetime of bad luck." The bear's banter turned coarse. One of them reviled my great-granddad for being a money grabber, and another said something about a pretty flower stuck into a pile of cow shit. A third called Shan Bian Lang a scruffy leper who oozed pus and excreted yellow fluids. He said the stench of rotten flesh drifted beyond the Shan compound, which swarmed with horseflies. "Little bride, if you let Shan Bian Lang touch you, your skin will rot away." As the horns and woodwinds blared and tooted, the taste of eggs grew stronger, forcing Grandma to bite down hard on her lip, but to no avail. She opened her mouth and spewed a stream of filth, soiling the curtains, towards which the 5 flies dashed as though shot from a gun. "Puka, puka, keep rocking," one of the bearers roared. "Keep rocking. Sooner or later, she'll have to say something." "Elder brothers, spare me," Grandma pleaded desperately between agonizing retches. Then she burst into tears. She felt humiliated. She could sense the perils of her future, knowing she'd spend the rest of her life drowning in a sea of bitterness. "Oh, father, oh, mother, I've been destroyed by a miserly father and a heartless mother.